Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron. So a couple days ago, I told you, Joel, I don't know if you remember, I guess this project's finally gonna make me read the documentation for this particular tool I was using.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. And so I could pick on multiple different, technologies that you sort of
Sure.
like don't know, or you think you don't like or whatever. But
Right.
it was one of those situations where I was like, you know what? I think I'm actually gonna have to read the manual and, get into it, not just a tutorial or not just like
Mhm.
skimming through it and trying to find the things that I'm interested in.
Not just the quick start.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, quick start would be a lot more than I read to begin with.
Oh,
Anyway, I just kind of
okay.
jumped into like, I'm sure I could understand this. Give me the reference.
Yeah.
Which kind of brought me back to this joke that we always have, that where every time there's a new major Laravel version, I read the whole manual, and like
Hmm.
it used to be like a day or two, and now it's like taking a week. I don't know if it's because
Oh,
I'm getting
not
older or
not
there's
of
a lot more
sustained
stuff in
time,
Laravel.
but just like a little
No,
bit
no,
here, a
no.
little bit there over a couple of days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's grown. There's a lot of features in there now.
Yeah. And so it just kind of got me thinking about it. Is like it's one of those things that I do to make sure that I stay a little bit more current
Hmm.
with the technologies, as I sort of identify something that, like, if I really don't like it, or if I can't seem to do it fast enough,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this must be something I need to learn then.
Yeah. Well, I can relate to that. I mean, I've kind of the pendulum has swung different directions for me because I used to be, oh, I just want to learn everything. And
I
I would kind
remember.
of like dive too deep into things that I just never was going to use. Like I won't drag out the laundry list of things that have littered my career of like things I learned and got excited about and then like promptly never used again. But
Yeah, I remember. I
oh
remember.
yeah.
I'm not. I won't name it, but I definitely remember one particular one where I
Mhm.
was like, "You just need to stop." You're like,
I
"No, it's the
know.
best thing ever."
Yeah, I know. I've learned, but yeah, there are times where, like for us especially, we'll join a project, and it might not even be a whole technology. It might be a package, right? It might be a way of organizing code, or there's different things we bump into where you just sort of realize, oh, I don't have a lot of experience with this. Maybe for no particular reason other than I've just never needed it before. But now, oh boy, now I need to learn this. And so like, what's a good way to do it? Now, you said you like reading the docs. Like that's not a secret to me because I've known you for a while. Um, I don't think most people maybe take that approach. Maybe I'm biased, and am I saying more people are like me? I don't know. Is that a thing people do? Like, think everyone thinks like them?
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
know that people don't read the manual in the way that I usually do, but I
hmm,
also think that manuals exist to be read.
yeah.
And like, you know what it's like working on a project that doesn't have a manual, right? When you
Oh,
need it,
sure.
then
Yeah,
you're just like, well, how does this even work?
yeah. Well, let me pick kind of a broad example, but one I think
Mhm.
that is an interesting topic, and that is JavaScript, right? The language. So the reason I think this is a little interesting there's two things. So I think there's a group of developers, and I would maybe include myself in this, that just feel more comfortable doing back end work, right? Oh, I just like PHP. I just like writing code and like not thinking about the front end, whether that's JavaScript or CSS or all the browser quirks. And the more I say this, it's like it's probably because I was burned starting at kind of the birth of the web and like how bad it was, and like I just sort of like developed
Yeah.
scar tissue. But so let's just take JavaScript and maybe CSS too.
Yeah,
But
I would say it's more CSS with you, but okay.
yeah, that's probably fair. But like, what would you say? I have an idea in mind, but what would you say is the quote unquote manual for JavaScript? Does anything jump to mind? Like, if you were going to start a blank slate today and learn JavaScript, where would you go to quote unquote read the manual?
Well, I literally had an answer in place for CSS,
Oh,
but now
okay,
that you keep
well,
asking
either
about
is fine.
JavaScript, no, I don't want to even give you that answer. Well, I guess probably that book series, You Don't Know JavaScript.
Okay, okay,
I haven't read that in a long time, but I seem to remember it was like one of those open source style books where you could read it or you could pay, or a
yeah,
combination of the two. And I don't remember maybe it's a bad recommendation. It's just like you said, like where would you go? Like
Hmm.
that's when people ask, like, oh, how do you start to learn PHP or whatever? I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know how you do that now. I know how you do
Yeah.
that in 2000.
Okay.
Like I don't know.
Yeah, those books aren't
So
quite that old, but yeah, it was like the era
yeah,
of like when ES6 was coming out, and like there was all sorts of new concepts, and it was like
yeah.
they were kind of small books too. Like they would go deep into like one topic, but they weren't. It wasn't like a
Right.
600-page book. I think they were more like 50 to 100 pages or something like that.
Well, when we say JavaScript too, though, these days it's usually like people. It's rare that someone's like, I need to learn JavaScript. They almost always say, I need to learn React or
Oh,
Angular
sure.
or Vue or something.
Yeah.
And so, there you should definitely know JavaScript, the underlying technologies for all
Hmm.
those different things. But you'll also learn some of that while you're reading the manual or following the exercises or the tutorials for React.
Yeah, for a higher level framework on top of it. Um,
Right.
so those books are good. I read them, and I'm probably like the sucker that paid for them too, because that's just how I am. Like, oh, I could
No,
read it for free. I'll pay $30 instead. Why not?
no. I think when people write books, you should definitely buy their books, especially if they're about validation.
That's right.
Anyway,
As an author, but you know what I thought you were going to say is the Mozilla Developer Network, because
that's what I was going to say for CSS.
oh, okay, but well they have an I think an equally good intro to JavaScript, right? Like
Mhm.
that walks you through like super basic stuff, like here's how you declare a variable,
Yeah,
but all the way
I know
through
they
to
have that, but I could see in your face you were just drooling and ready for me to say that. So I was like, I'm
oh,
just going to throw them off and say something totally different.
it's okay. Well, now I get to say it, and I get to sound smart.
You're welcome.
But that is a good reference, and of course that's free too. Although I think even that now they have like a pro version or something where you can pay for it. But that's sort of more just to support Mozilla in the mission. But I found those useful, and I'm trying to think. I didn't actually finish reading it all the way through. I think I kind of sporadically pick and
Well,
choose.
I'll tell you, I'll share one of your stories that I'm not sure if that you want to share, but
All
I'm going to
right,
share it for you.
I appreciate
Um,
that.
because it's going to go back to CSS.
Okay.
So a couple years ago, when we worked together a lot on some front end stuff, I remember you just getting like, I wouldn't say angry, but like annoyed at CSS and like,
Hmm.
how do you do this rule? And this is stupid. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it does though. You just have to know how it works. And
Right.
like that's just like I mean, I couldn't think of a better answer to, well, if you know how it works, then it works how you know it works.
Yeah.
Then when you know how it works, you know how it works. It's like I couldn't seem to give anything worthwhile,
Yeah.
but like, oh, I don't like this. I'm just like, did you learn it? And
Right.
then I remember that you finally are like, I'm going to take the next week or month or whatever it is,
Hmm.
and do all these different CSS challenges. And Joel's the kind of person that likes to do like little games online, to,
Yeah.
like
I'm
not
hands
like
on.
like little hands-on learner and
Yeah.
stuff. And I get that, but he's doing all these different things. I'm just like, oh, just read the book. But I mean, what book, right?
Yeah.
So, but I saw that you kind of identified that as something that,
Hmm.
after complaining to me and knowing that I wasn't going to be one of the other backend developers that say, "Oh yeah, CSS
There's
is the worst,"
right.
because there's a lot of people that do that. Like
Yeah.
you can find people bashing things. I'm like, no, like you can't
Right.
tell me something is the worst until you've really spent a lot of time with it. And I'm guilty of the same thing. I've felt that about certain things,
Hmm.
and so that's why I was like, you need to learn it first, and then you can tell me if it's horrible or not.
Right.
And Joel took his time to start learning it.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful thing to watch my little Padawan growing into a full-fledged CSS development
Uh,
master.
yeah, that one I did complete the whole section in the Mozilla Developer Network docs MDN. I couldn't remember if I did JavaScript, but that one I did, and honestly, it was super useful. I know on this podcast we often talk about mental models, but that's what I was missing. Right? There's a bunch of systems in how CSS was designed. And you can argue like, oh, that's dumb, or like that's historically
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
a mistake or whatever. But like whatever, if you understand it, then there's far fewer surprises than if you go in there and you're looking at if because what I was doing, I think a lot of developers do this, is like, oh, here's a list of properties. I think like vertical align should do this, right? Or you know what I mean? Like you're trying to intuit based on maybe a property name or different things like what it should do without understanding the mental model underneath it about like what's margin versus padding. Like that's a simple one, but if you don't know that and you're just trying to guess at it through trial and error, yeah, it's going to be pretty frustrating.
Mhm.
One other thing I just want to bring up, and I'm not shilling a product here, but I've long had this, you know this, Eric, this like idea, being a hands-on learner, of like building some sort of learning product to like, there's all these different, there's science behind it, right? The brain science, like how people learn is kind of there's fundamental ways memory is formed and things like that. But anyways, there is a tool called, oh, I'm going to forget the name now. I think it's executeprogram.com, and it's awesome. Like it doesn't cover CSS, it doesn't cover PHP. They do have a module, a few on JavaScript, but it's really well structured. And because I like the teaching style, it's like short little nuggets. Like you're encouraged to not just like binge 3 hours of reading something. You do like
Mhm.
one or two lessons, and then the next day when you come back, before you start like the next lesson, it's like, hey, do you remember this from what you learned yesterday? And do you remember this from what you learned a week ago? And it sounds stupid, but like stuff that I would get tripped up on, like I don't anymore. In fact, they have one on regular expressions, and I feel like I know regular expressions probably better than 90% of developers just because of that like short little module. So
And you're more modest than 100% of the developers.
that's right. Yes. No, I truly do. I think because it's a neat blend of like talking about those concepts, like in regex there's character classes, like, well, what is that? But then it sprinkles in like weird edge cases, because anything has weird edge cases. Like in JavaScript, looping over an array in different ways will like do different things, just
Mhm.
weird edge cases that can happen. But it's like that mix of the deeper mental models and the way it's presented, along with like, oh, just watch out for this, watch out for that. I like it. So, anyways, I'll get off my soapbox now, but I found that one really useful.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense for different styles of learning. I
Mhm.
I know that not everyone learns the way that I do too, and
Yeah.
not everyone should, because it's horrible. But I think that the whole point though of all this is that you kind of keep an eye on things that are challenging you or making you
Right.
angry or whatever like that, and then determine if it's like a real thing. Like,
Hmm.
oh, I don't like this because of XYZ. Like
Yeah.
how I thought about Laravel facades for a long time because
Mhm.
the name reminded me of, oh, not the name, but the implementation on the surface reminded me of some static method stuff that I wasn't familiar with
Oh,
compared
sure.
to
Yeah.
how it really actually works.
Hmm.
And so it's the same sort of thing as like once you took time to look at it, you're like,
Yeah.
maybe I still don't like this, or maybe I do or whatever, but at least now I understand it. And it's the same thing. So if you're running into some issues with CSS or JavaScript or
Yeah.
just PHP in general, like identify that and then find a resource. Because I mean, the last thing I'll say here, I don't want to go
Mhm.
too
Okay.
soapboxy as well,
Yeah.
is when people say, "Oh, I can't find anything to learn XYZ." It's like, how hard did you try?
Right.
Like,
Right.
because the internet is now full of everything.
Oh, yeah. There's never been a better time to learn, period, but specifically learn technology, web technology. It's like there's an abundance. Aaron, have you ever in your life worn a bow tie?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
absolutely, I
well, if I want
have.
to, I have a question about a thought I've had about bow ties, but I want to hear the occasion first, if you're willing to share.
I mean, it was a clip-on.
Okay, that's fine. It doesn't have to be a
Yeah,
tie.
yeah, yeah. When I was a cute little errand boy, I would go to church and wear bow ties. So
Okay.
I'd get all dressed up and have my
Okay.
dress shoes on. I'd have my dress pants, a pocket full of candy, dress shirt, bow
Yeah.
tie, another
Pocket full
pocket
of
full of
candy.
candy, and then I was good.
Okay. Well, so I just had this thought the other day, and I was thinking more. I wasn't thinking of the little boy bow tie, but that's a good use case. But I'm thinking like the guy wearing like a tuxedo, like a fancy
Mm.
black tie bow tie. And there's like two times I see people wearing them. Like you're getting married, or you're a waiter at a restaurant, and it just kind of felt weird to me. Like this elegant thing, like those two different occasions feel very different. And now you threw like the little boy going to church, and it's like, what is the common thread with this bow tie?
Well, let us just remind everyone that not only do you have heated floors in your
Oh, come
bathroom,
on.
you go to restaurants where the waiters wear bow ties and tuxedos.
Yeah, like
How rich are you?
have you never
need to
been to
stop.
like
Stop buying our books. Joel has way too much money. Consistency is key, whether it's releasing more than 90 episodes without missing a single day like we have, or working on your development project and making sure you have good test coverage.
well, if you'd like to work with reliable, dependable developers like us, head over to nocompromises.io and book a call today.